Okay, I would say good morning, but it's not morning anymore. Hello, happy noon, and happy April Fool's Day. I'm Maurice Carter. I'm the president of Sustainable Newton. I'm joined today by my fellow members, Theodosia Wade and Melissa Hage, and our special guests, Don Moreland and Aaron Scranton. The the closest I can't speak for my panelists, but the closest I'm going to come to April Fool's joke is pretending like I'm actually outside on a warm sunny day, because it's anything but. But this is not quite a Beatles reunion, but it is a great opportunity for us to get the band back together, and these four are fab. So this is the first time, I think, that we found out about Aaron's latest baby that's joined the world since the last time we were all together. But this is sort of an opportunity for us to update you on the outcome and what's happened since a program that we started with Sustainable Newton back in 2018 and through 2019, Solarize Newton Morgan. And so that was I'll let the others talk a little bit about exactly what a Solarize program is and how each of us participated, but the Solarize Newton Morgan program resulted in 16 installations, rooftop standalone solar installations in our community, 85 kilowatts of capacity, solar capacity, 13.5 kilowatt hours of battery storage capability. And along the way, systems that each year since have been keeping about 160,000 pounds of CO2 out of our atmosphere every year. So a big deal. And along the way, we also worked with our local governments in Oxford and Covington to try and make changes to ordinances in place around electric rates that in the case of Oxford, they removed their fee. In the case of Covington, we got it significantly reduced. And those are sort of paving the way for more people, more of our friends and neighbors to join the solar movement. And so we wanted Theodosia and Melissa to talk to us today, since they both have been through a Solarize program. And then we wanted Don and Aaron to give us an update on the industry. So Don was our expert through the Solarize Newton Morgan program and really taught us the ropes, and along the way helped us do an RFP process, which is where Aaron and the Alternative Energy Southeast AES organization came to play, because they were our selected installer for those 16 systems. So I'm going to turn it over to Theodosia and Melissa, who are going to kind of start off talking about their experience with Solarize, and then we're going to get into the meat of this with Don and Aaron giving us their perspective on where solar's at in our state and our community today. So I'm going to step back, and then I'll be back at the end to just wrap us up and talk about future events. Also, I will be facilitating after the presentation any questions that people have. As you have questions, you can put them in the chat here, or you can raise your hand. And once we get to a good point to take those questions, I'll start to field those to our panelists. So thank you, and Theodosia, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, well, the Solarize program was so exciting to us because it gave us, gave me personally, my husband and I, a chance to put our money where our mouth is. Because, I've wanted to reduce my carbon footprint in a number of ways, and I could do it putting solar panels on. I just never thought in my lifetime I would get to have solar panels on my roof. My next thing is going to be my EV car, but I'm not there yet. But the big thing was confidence. Working with Don and Solar Crowdsource, Gipple, Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, and Environment Georgia, we were able to look at different companies. Aaron's company is the one we chose, Alternative Energy Southeast, but we looked at other companies and got comparisons. I would have never felt confident about going with solar unless I'd had these experts working with us, holding our hands. It gave us bulk pricing, so that was helpful. And equipment was chosen, all of that was kind of taken care of. And so it has also given us a great group of people here in Newton County. There's 16 of us. I've tried to stay connected to everybody so that as new things are coming down the pipe, we can kind of hear about them. I did not go with the batteries, but that's another thing that I would like to be able to do at some point. I'm going to share my screen right now with you all. Because I wanted to show you a little bit of the results. of my system. And you can see here, I hope, electricity used, and I compared 4 years, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. And you can see in that first graph, the electricity that was used by my house. I got a 3.5 kilowatt system, a little bit smaller than the normal 5 kilowatt. And I have about a 2,500 square foot home. Normally, if you look at the hottest years on record, you know that 2020, 2019, 2017, these are some of the, in the last 5 years, the hottest years on record. And yet, if you look at the trend of where my electricity use has been, I've gone down tremendously. So I was on a trajectory going up until 2018. Then after 2018, when I installed my panels in March of 2019, you can see I've got a trajectory going down. So that to me is great, because the better I can be of control of my own energy and not be using quite so much using the solar panels really makes me feel a lot better. Prices are going to go up for the utilities, and my prices will continue to go down. So you can see here, same for the cost of the electricity, down, down, down. So I felt really good about my system and the way it's been working. So I'd be glad to take questions at the end about anything about my personal system as well. Melissa, it's you.
Yeah. So I was unfortunately unable to participate in the Solarize Newton Morgan County program because I didn't own my house at the time and wasn't going to install them on a rental house, but I have since moved out to DeKalb County. And when I was, even before I moved in with my partner, I was Googling something and I was like, I wonder if there's a Solarize program out here. And we caught it. It was the last week of the Solarize DeKalb Decatur 2.0 campaign. And I was like, I don't live here yet, but it's coming and you need to look into this, because everything went so fantastically with the Solarize Newton campaign that I felt really comfortable working with another Solarize campaign and trusting that everything that we had done for the Solarize Newton campaign had been done for this other one, with picking a fantastic installer and getting that bulk pricing and having the whole thing just work really, really smoothly. So we kind of jumped on that campaign literally in the last week. When we contacted someone, they said there are 5 spots left. So if you want to get in on this, like, make a decision now. So we did. Fortunately, that was a really successful campaign. I think they made it to tier 8 pricing, which I didn't know was a thing. And over, I think it was 100 systems installed. So we were just one of 100. Theodosia had a slightly smaller than average installation. I had a slightly larger than average. I got 23 panels put on the house, and it's a 7.25 kilowatt hour system. So it's a much bigger house, more solar panels. And we actually did something a little bit differently. That was an option, was we were able to get the solar panels financed through bill replacement. Summit Solar was the installers. And so we are on a 25-year payment plan where essentially we looked at what the bill was, our utility bill for the year. And then we looked at, they helped us do these calculations, which was great, of essentially we're paying the same amount each month, except that a portion of our money is now going towards the solar payment, and a smaller amount is going towards the Georgia Power utility bill. And so while we're not really saving too much money, we're not spending any more money, and we feel really good about that energy coming from renewable sources as opposed to kind of traditional sources. And the way that finances will work out will only get better as the cost of the electricity increases over time. So, we have this budget plan figured out of, it's not going to cost us anymore, and it's only going to start decreasing. So having that bill replacement plan was really key, and able to get this installed, because didn't have the money to put it in all at once, and being able to have it financed made it something that was really, really feasible. The other thing we were able to get on was through Georgia Power, the monthly net metering, which has been helpful with feeling like we're actually we didn't get a battery. So having the extra electricity that we were producing going back into the system, and kind of feeling good that someone else gets to benefit from our renewable energy production that wasn't able to actually install solar panels on their house, but they can, I don't know who's getting it, it's just out there in the world of the grid system, but someone is getting the benefit from our extra production on beautiful sunny days like we've been having. I don't have any data to show you guys because we just had the system turned on February 1st. So it's really only 2 months. So it's a brand new system, and we've been totally geeking out on the data and looking at how much energy we're producing, how much energy we're consuming. And I think an unexpected kind of side effect of having the solar panels installed is that we're just way more aware and conscious of how much energy we are using and the times of day and what's causing a spike in the energy. Like, we can look and see our energy usage, and there's an increase at 6 o'clock. Oh, we turned on the oven. There we go. We can see it. And I think we're just having more conversations with the family about energy usage, and having people be more aware of it has been just, I think, a fantastic unexpected side effect. So we're
Melissa.
Yeah.
I forgot to say, I'm doing that Georgia Power net metering also, because Georgia Power is mine, and that has been great. They have, it took them a year to get it going, but they did reimburse me in January for all of 2020. And that's going to be a big help going forward. I did finance up front, so I forgot to say that also, because I think that's another way to do it. I paid half when I signed my contract, and I paid the other half after the installation was finished and the panels were actually creating energy for me. I also changed to a time of use plan with Georgia Power, which was a big help, because that means I'm really monitoring my power usage much better, because I know they're going to charge me a lot more in the middle of the day during the summer months than they are going to charge me at night. So I'm very conscious about when I let my AC run and all that. So all of that has helped me to save money and has made a big difference.
Yeah, and it's just conversations with neighbors and family members about solar panels and electricity use. It's just become a really interesting conversation starter and a chance to educate others about just thinking about energy consumption and electricity. But I think it's been interesting just thinking about, Theodosia, how you paid for your panels. You were able to split it into 2 payments. We're on a 25-year payment plan, so a little bit different. But I guess, thinking about, for the experts, maybe they're aware, and our first question for you guys is thinking about, are there other ways to finance? How can people get these panels on their roofs if they don't have a lump sum of money all at once? Is there, what options are out there for people?
I want to start, and then I'll hand it over to Aaron, because it didn't used to be this good out there. The more and more financing options are coming available all the time, and they seem to be getting better and better. So what I mean by that is, you used to really have a choice of going to your bank and getting some kind of a unsecured loan or a home equity line of credit or something, which, those are still possibly good ways to finance these, but the terms on those were usually around, 10 years would be your payback period, if not shorter. And so to amortize a loan over 10 years for an asset like this, it doesn't really match up very well. So now we're seeing finance programs that will take it out to 20 years or 25 years, like you said, Melissa. And what that does is it stretches out the loan payments to where not only can you have a bill swap like what you were talking about, but you can actually save money on day one. You can be cash flow positive because you're saving more money on your electricity bill, especially during the summertime, than what your debt service is on that loan. And the marketplace for financing solar is becoming more competitive too. So we're seeing a lot better interest rates, lower loan fees, and just a really great result across the board. And then when you add that to some of the monthly netting available through Georgia Power, hopefully soon to be available across the entire state, then it really makes a compelling case. But Aaron has a lot more experience with these financing options than I do, so I'll turn it over to him.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, he's absolutely right that there are definitely more options coming available. Obviously, the find it yourself anywhere you like option will always be available when it comes to this kind of contract work. However you come about the money, it's going to work. It's just a matter of you being comfortable with whatever choice you've made. Traditionally, or at least in the past couple of years, AES has used companies like Clean Energy Credit Union. They've got a very simple, straightforward way of doing things that allows you to take the loan out in two parts. One of those you just pay back with the tax credit portion, and the rest of it you pay monthly over a certain amount of time. And it tends to match up pretty well with your savings from your power bill. In some cases, it's even better. Another option that we've recently started using is called Mosaic. The advantage to them is, like Don was saying, they have a lot more options in terms of loan length. So you can really stretch this thing out if you want to. You can even shorten it down if you want to. So they've got lots of different options. And the idea is simple, that, you know, if you can invest in something that you have ownership over and spend no more money than you are currently, while at the same time generating clean energy, what's to stop you?
Yeah.
So those kinds of things coming along have definitely helped to grow the industry even more than previously, when you had to have a pretty large lump sum of money just sitting around to get into the game.
The only other thing I want to add is, because the financing solar marketplace has gotten more competitive, we're seeing where, you know, before you would have to have something like a 720 credit score to qualify. Now we're seeing these same programs offering really competitive interest rates, you know, something like 2.99 with a 650 credit score to qualify. I even heard, and I haven't seen it yet, but I even heard there's another one that charges around 3.99% and will accept you if you have a 600 credit score or above. So there's a lot of new stuff out there, and it's making it a lot easier to go solar.
And I think the other thing too is the value on your home. So, you know, I'm thinking I'm added to the value of my home. You know, people, I could either, if I sell, I could either take the panels with me, or I could leave them with the home. So, you know, you do feel like that is a selling point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of, just let me comment on that real.
Yeah, no, go for it.
There's a lot of studies out there now that have proven that solar does increase the value of a home. And there's actually a blog on the Solar Crowdsource website that goes into this in more detail and references a lot of these studies. And it just seems like more and more this concept of increasing your property value is becoming, you know, more validated all the time, to the point now where I actually have a meeting with a Realtor Association of Atlanta coming up here later on today, and they are working on ways to make it a standard as part of the appraisal process, to take into consideration whether you have solar or not and how that affects your property value. Whereas before, it was, you know, really hard to come up with some kind of a comparative analysis. You know, how they do the appraisals, they compare different homes. And now they're, thanks to people like Aaron and AES, there's a lot more solar out there. So there's a lot more comparables. And it makes sense too, because if you are generating your own electricity on your own property using your own resources, then you're reducing the operating and maintenance cost of that property, whether it be a home or a commercial enterprise. And therefore it inherently has more value because it costs you less to operate and maintain.
Mhm.
And with all the financing stuff, it wasn't, when we were part of the Solarize campaign, it wasn't like, hey, there's financing out there, go figure it out. It was, there was a lot of support from everyone involved in the Solarize campaign and the installer and the whole thing. Like Theodosia said, the whole, from starting to think about solar to how to pay for it was made easier by being part of one of these campaigns. It made it cheaper, but it also saved time and stress and finger cramping from Googling and trying to figure out what the best option is. And it just it was super beneficial. And I don't think we definitely would not have done it if it wasn't part of a solar campaign. I'd like to say that we would eventually, but all of those reasons made it easier.
It would have been really scary to go out on our own and
yeah, exactly. But the other thing that neither Theodosia nor I did in this initial part was getting batteries. And I know, batteries, the whole storage batteries, cost has changed over time. The number of people getting it has changed over time. The ability to get them has changed. And just looking for an update from you guys about those things of how much do our batteries, has the cost changed? Has the number of people changed? How so? What's the availability look like these days? Or is it easy to get one? Or is there still kind of a backlog? What's the story with the battery situation?
Oh, it's a very dramatic story that changes quite often. So storage batteries, they're definitely coming along, and you're seeing a lot of fresh faces kind of entering the field. Of those, though, there have only been a few that have really managed to gain any market share of an appreciable size. I'd say the king since they released has been Tesla and their Powerwall. It's just by far the most demanded energy storage system on the market. They have inherently, since the beginning, had trouble keeping up with the demand that they were experiencing. And about Q1 of 2020, we were able to get out of our backlog and actually start installing the batteries along with the solar systems that they were going in with. However, by the middle of Q3, COVID lockdowns affecting production lines, as well as people ordering at an unprecedented rate these storage systems, which seems also to have been related to the lockdowns. People just wanting to invest in their homes and everything else, it put them back into a backlog. And we were the only company in the Southeast guaranteed any Powerwalls from Tesla. And they're still in a backlog. They're doing a little bit better. They're starting to come around the curve on that. But we're back at the point where, you wait 3 or 4 months from the time of having placed the order for a battery to actually having it installed, whereas your solar can be installed in, 6, 8, 10 weeks, something along those lines. Other battery systems that are coming onto the market, I'd say the biggest newcomer has been Generac. They are a well-known company with a decent financial base underneath them to not just come to market, but actually stay in market. It is kind of their field, even though they're a generator company. Their whole business, more or less, is in keeping the lights on. And so their battery system is pretty darn good. It's a little bit different than a Tesla Powerwall or LG Chem or other lithium ion systems in that it is a DC coupled system. The cost to kilowatt hour ratio isn't quite as good as something like a Powerwall, but it's not terrible. And I do think they have a fair place in the market. There are also other systems available for different purposes. If you want to have an off-grid kind of life, there are specific systems for that. There's certainly a lot of room for this industry, the energy storage system industry, to mature still. But companies are increasingly interested in entering that market as other companies are proving that it is a viable market. So.
Awesome. Anything else to add from you, Don?
Have you guys been seeing it seems like I see them all the time. Maybe I watch too much TV, but Generac has that ad where, we're not gonna take it. If you guys haven't seen it, they're really making a strong push into the market. I don't know how competitive their prices are for whether you do just solar or solar plus their battery system, but I love those those ads because it kind of makes me feel like we've made it. We're finally getting mainstream. I saw an ad the other day for it was like those pants that construction folks wear, duckies, I think they're called, or something like that, where they were putting solar on a rooftop, and advertising their equipment, but they were using the solar rooftop as a backdrop. And the whole thing is really exciting to see things change. I don't think companies like Generac can offer the type of competitive pricing and the quality service that somebody like AES does. But it's just to kind of put that out there, since Aaron mentioned Generac, and some of you may have seen those ads. It's good. This is all good for the entire solar industry. I'll just add one more thing about the batteries is since Georgia Power was forced to go into their monthly netting. So what that means is the extra electricity that you are generating that you're not using, you can sell it back to Georgia Power and they will compensate you the retail rate for that excess energy. But they reconcile it every month. So at the end of the month, if you've exported more energy than what you've used, then you'll get it'll wash out to be zero. But if you export more than what you used, then they will compensate you, but just not at the retail rate. They'll compensate you at the lower, what we call avoided cost rate, which is kind of like a wholesale rate. It's around 3.5 cents, something like that. So because Georgia Power is now doing that, some people feel like, well, as long as I size my system appropriately enough, then I won't be generating too much electricity more than I'm using. So I won't be needing to export as much energy. So therefore, maybe I don't need that battery, because batteries really serve two functions. They provide emergency backup power in case of an outage, and they also help you store your excess energy during the day. So later on at night, like when Melissa gets home at 6 o'clock and turns that oven on, you can use that battery power to power to power your appliances and things. So some people might feel that because of the new policy with Georgia Power, maybe I don't need to store that electricity as much during the day because I'm getting a credit for it from Georgia Power. But actually, when you see things like what's happened in Texas with their big grid outages, being able to not only kind of shift your load and be able to store that power during the day and use it at night, that is important. But we're seeing a lot of people wanting to harden their properties in terms of resiliency and really have that ability to be able to use that emergency backup power just in case something goes wrong. So what we're seeing is that just because there's a new, better policy for compensation with Georgia Power, we're still seeing a good uptake on battery systems, and because they're becoming more affordable than ever, and people just love having that emergency backup source and that confidence moving forward.
Yeah, and just having that kind of independence, I think people enjoy. But before we switch to talking about more policies, both Theodosia and I were able to get solar because of Solarize Programs, and we keep saying how amazing they are. And so what's the future of Solarize programs? What ones are going on now? What ones are coming up? How can people get solar through one of these Solarize programs?
We're rolling right along. So we've had a few since the Newton campaign. You mentioned the Decatur DeKalb campaign. That was a very successful program. We did about 150 systems during that campaign and over 1.1 megawatts of total capacity. And that was all during the pandemic, like you mentioned. And I think Aaron's right. A lot of people are working more from home, and they're interested in investing more in their homes and increasing that property value. And they're using more electricity. So that's a big part of it. We are doing a little bit more out of the state of Georgia. We have been asked to run some programs down in the Virgin Islands, which is, I'm not going to object to that. We did a program in St. John a couple of years ago, and now we're doing one in St. Thomas this year, and we're getting a lot of great interest from that. We are getting ready to launch a campaign in Asheville, North Carolina next week. Actually, next Wednesday is our big launch event there, and there's a lot of interest there. But coming back home, we've joined forces. So we planned on doing a Solarize Atlanta 2.0 already for this year, but the folks in Savannah were really interested in doing a Solarize program. So, and then in addition to just doing a Solarize program, because those cities have had resolutions to make their cities 100% clean energy cities by a certain year. But that's not enough. When they make these pledges, they want to do it in an equitable way, and for a just transition. So what that means is that traditionally marginalized communities have been at the brunt of some of these generating assets where, if you live near one of these large fossil fuel plants, then, there can be some health risks associated with that, plus property values can go down, being close to one of those big plants. So, and what you had was a very large amount of power, not just electricity, but financial power in these utilities. And so there's a lot of power in just a few hands that, and all of us were really just at the whim of what these utilities were able to do. But now, because of solar, and the way you can deploy solar really anywhere and use that electricity to offset what you would be getting from the utility, we're seeing a democratization of energy now. And what that allows you to do is to, when you transition from a fossil fuel based economy to a clean energy economy, you can really address some of those equity issues and alleviate the energy burden for some of the most vulnerable low and income families and communities of color. So within these new Solarize programs in Atlanta and in Savannah, we are also adding components to make sure that we can help buy down the cost for low income families and provide what we call inclusive financing options for these families as well. So they can also take part in the clean energy revolution in the economy and be lifted up and alleviate energy burdens and really help us make this transition into clean energy a just and equitable one.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, because that's been certainly one of our concerns here in Covington and in Newton County, as we were talking about the Solarize program and talking to the city, trying to get those distribution fees reduced or removed. That's always comes up. We're need to think about everybody in our city and how we can bring this benefit not just to the people who can afford it, but to everybody. So that's fabulous. One of the things that I know I was able to take advantage of, and Melissa, I'm sure y'all were too, is the federal tax credit.
Yes.
So I was able to, I did pay mine up front, but I was able to get a tax credit from the federal government. So I paid fewer taxes that year, and I got a rebate basically that helped me pay for my system. So that was really, it helped me recoup some of my money pretty quickly. So I've heard something about new administration and new regulations that was getting ready to, it was dying down. It was stepping down and going to be eliminated, but wondered about what the deal is with the federal tax credit. And are we looking at anything that might happen in Georgia? I know we had at one point an EV credit, and I think at one time we had a solar rooftop credit, tax credits on both of those. And I don't know if we're going to be able to get back to that point or what's going on with that.
Yeah, Aaron, why don't you go ahead and
Go
talk about the federal, and there's not a whole lot going on with the state, but there's a couple things we can talk about there too.
Sure. Yeah, the federal tax credits have been extended at 26%. Originally, they were scheduled to step down in 2021 to 22%, but they've been extended at 26% through 2022. So that means we've got, I don't know, 18 more months or 20 more months of 26% federal tax credit. And that goes for residential and commercial properties. And the way that works is simple. Anything necessary for the installation of a solar photovoltaic system on those properties can, the expense of it can be claimed against your federal tax liability. So if you're, a homeowner and you say spend $10,000 on a solar array for your home, $2,600 of that would be available to you as a tax credit. So if you were paying taxes that year and you had already paid it into the government, they would owe you $2,600 back. If you owed taxes to the government that year that you hadn't paid in, you'd owe $2,600 less. But it is a dollar for dollar credit. In terms of utility rebates, there are still some available. There aren't a lot of them out there, but there are still some. So, depending on who your utility is, we can let you know if they've still got something going. Don, I think you do know a little bit more about the active stuff going on in the state. You're always poking your heads in those fun circles, so I'll let you take them.
We try to. So the new administration is very much wanting to deal with climate change, and renewable energy, clean renewable energy is certainly a big part of that. And so we're not sure yet. There's something called the Green Act that will extend the old 30% tax credit out until I think 2026. And but that's kind of, I think it passed the House, but is I think it's kind of stalled, or it hasn't gone to the Senate yet. There's some other provisions in this new infrastructure bill that was introduced yesterday that could have good ramifications for clean energy. There's another bill that has proposed a standalone tax credit for just battery storage. So right now you can get a battery, but you can't really get the tax credit unless it's coupled with a solar system. But this standalone tax credit for battery bill that I mentioned would allow you to get the tax credit just for the battery. So there's a lot of things in the hopper. We're not sure how it's all going to shake out. Some people might be thinking, well, wait, I'm just going to wait and see what happens, with all these bills and before I go solar. But I just want to mention that anything that we have now they will make retroactive. So if you were to get a system installed in 2021, but they don't get a bill passed until next year, then there's a very, very, very high likelihood that any new incentives would be retroactive for systems installed, in this year as well. As far as the state is concerned, there isn't. There used to be a state tax credit, Theodosia, but that expired a long time ago. I think back in 2015, it was already gobbled up. The allocation for that was already gobbled up. So, and there really isn't a lot of new solar-friendly policies or initiatives out there that I know of that would bring back any utility rebates that used to be that aren't there, or that implement a tax credit or anything like that. And that's okay, because the cost of solar has come down so far. We are at what we call grid parity with fossil fuels. So it costs more that to create a kilowatt hour of electricity from coal and natural gas than it does from solar on a whole, when you look at the levelized cost of energy basis. So we're fine just competing in the marketplace. The initiatives right now in the legislature and at the Public Service Commission are just to try to even the playing field. Right now, there's a lot of artificial barriers that can make the economics of going solar a little bit more challenging. And if we can have those artificial barriers removed, then we feel very strongly that solar can compete in the marketplace without any added incentives. We just need to take the shackles off and let us compete and let the free markets take their course.
You mentioned the Public Service Commission, and I think it's interesting because I didn't know that much about the Public Service Commission. I mean, I knew that they regulated, I thought, or that they at least suggested to the power companies. I know if Georgia Power wants to raise my rates, they have to get approval through the Public Service Commission and that sort of thing. But I guess dealing with solar and being more aware of the Public Service Commission, I've realized how important it is to vote for the people in the Public Service Commission and to know more about the people. I always try to get my ballot ahead of time and look up all the offices that I'm voting for. But Public Service Commission, I was always like, well, I don't know how much that really matters. Now I'm just like on it, trying to be sure that I'm looking at the people and does this person drive an electric vehicle? I hope they do if they're on the Public Service Commission. We've had great conversations with Tim Eccles, and Maurice did a good job of having a conversation with him. So I think it's been a lot more important, but could you explain a little bit about the role of the Public Service Commission? I think people aren't quite aware of that sometimes.
Yeah, I'll start, Aaron. The Public Service Commission regulates regulated utilities. So they are investor-owned utilities. So the Public Service Commission, they do a bunch of things. They regulate some interstate commerce. They regulate telecommunications and a few other things, but primarily they regulate Georgia Power. And they do not incidentally regulate MEAGs or co-ops or EMCs or anything like that, because those are deemed nonprofit member-based utilities, and it's outside of the Public Service Commission's jurisdiction. So when we say Georgia Power was forced to do monthly netting, it's because in the 2019 rate case, a lot of us policy people, but including the Southern Environmental Law Center, took the lead in getting the Public Service Commission to recognize current law. So this is going to get a little wonky, but it's been current law since 2001 that utilities in the state of Georgia have to do this monthly netting that we are now the beneficiaries of, if you have Georgia Power. But these utilities weren't recognizing it. And so it took this hearing at the Public Service Commission to kind of straighten things out. And the Public Service Commission voted 4-1 to implement this new monthly netting scheme. And because Georgia Power is regulated, then Georgia Power had to go along with it. It did take them a year to get to it, but they finally did. And yeah, a lot of people are seeing credits on their bill. They did put caps on it, though. They have a cap of the first 5,000 customers or the first 32 megawatts of capacity to that can take advantage of the new monthly netting. But once those caps are met, then the monthly netting is slated to go away. That's why there's a new bill that was just dropped a couple of weeks ago at the General Assembly called SB 299 that reinforces the law and seeks to apply the monthly netting rule across all the utilities in the entire state. So, and without these artificial caps that were placed on by the Public Service Commission. So SB 299 also has a few other things in there that are exciting for the solar industry, but that gives you an idea of the, what the Public Service Commission does and how they can regulate Georgia Power to the point where we can see it every day in our electricity bills.
I'm going to jump in and just make sure we get the questions from our folks on the line. So JJ, you raised your hand a while back. I'm going to unmute you and let you come on screen if you would like. If I can find that, but go ahead and talk, and I figure out how to.
I just wanted to say I was also a participant in the Solarize project out here in Newton County. Although I was a second generation solar user, so I removed older panels and put new panels in, and in the process installed batteries. And I just wanted to point out that if you're planning to have a automatic battery backup type system, so that if your power goes out from the grid, you really need to plan that in the beginning of your system development, system design, because the original version, and I'm not sure if it's true, of the grid tied system that was set up so that your power is right there, able to support your house, but goes back into the grid as well. And if the power went out in the grid, your systems were programmed to shut down because you didn't want to electrocute linemen who are working on down power lines. And so if you are in fact planning to have a battery backup system, you really need to plan that in from the beginning so that the installers and the designers can understand how that works. On our system here, which we did plan that way, we've only had one power outage in all of 2020. And I would not have known about it if I hadn't walked out of my computer room and looked at some of the rest of the house where the power was out, because the computer room and the refrigerators are two of the things that we keep on all the time. I just wanted to pass that on, that it's very doable. And I'm one of these early adopters. You can always tell an early adopter because they're the ones that have the arrows in their back. Like pioneers.
Thanks, JJ. In the chat, Bill Couch, one of our fellow board members, has asked, and I'll let Don, you or Aaron answer this from a statewide perspective, and then we can talk specifically locally. But it's questions around the Meag Standby Fee, and so has there been or is there any planned movement with reducing the Meag Standby Fee?
Well, it's an independent fee, so it's not something that Meag does, but rather every individual city has some control over. So Oxford, they removed it altogether. Covington, they reduced it. Meanwhile, you can go to other cities and you'll find it still healthy and alive and crushing the solar industry, just as it always has. Unfortunately, I don't know of any plans. I think the only thing that can be done to force a change there is going to have to come from state legislation. So without legislative authority stepping in, I don't know how we could gain enough traction unless we just had a wild grassroots movements and all, what are there, 48 MEAG that rose up and demanded change, which might be a little difficult to organize. But hey, there's a couple avenues right there.
Yeah, this SB 299 just dropped. So Aaron, you might be pleased to learn that also in that bill is a provision to eliminate these discriminatory fees on solar customers. So and specifically what it says is that a utility can't just put a standby fee on a solar customer without having the data and the information to prove that standby fee is justified. So it can be called different things. It could be called a grid access fee, a standby fee. There's a number of different names for it, but these are fixed fees that you have to pay no matter how much energy you generate. And a lot of times your excess energy compensation that you get from the utility cannot go against these fixed fees. It can only go to eliminate charges for electricity that you have consumed. So this bill does address that, and it tries to address it in a broad manner to apply to all utilities, but also apply to all fees that are deemed discriminatory or not supported by data and facts as it applies to solar customers. So, whereas before we're trying to work with each one of these MEAGs and, one by one, and it's a heavy lift, and it would take years and years to work with every single one of them. This is an attempt at the state legislature to remove these fees once and for all. And again, it's removing these barriers and leveling the playing field for solar.
I do remember seeing that in the bill. I looked at it a couple of weeks ago. Do we know when that's going to vote?
Well, the legislature is about over this year, and that was kind of by design. We wanted to drop it late in the session, and we were going to have a hearing this week, but that hearing is going to be pushed off into this later spring and summer. So it'll be we're going to be working all year long this year on a grassroots movement for folks to advocate for this bill, contact their legislators, and it'll be up for consideration for 2022.
Yeah, one of the things that that we really meant to do last year, and then the pandemic got us all spun around in circles. But the time to get legislative action on stuff is not while they're in session. To get a hold of somebody to actually have a meaningful, you got to do the groundwork ahead of time. So, as Don, the stuff you're talking about moves forward, what we need to do locally, and we'll do in Sustainable Newton, is bring our representatives and senators in to talk with our group about all this stuff in a broader sense, and lay the groundwork for some support on the things that need to happen. So that's the key for us. And mental note, y'all hold me accountable, hold my fellow board members here accountable, but that's what we need to do. We need to focus in the summer and in the fall on the stuff that we want our representatives to go to the Gold Dome next year and do for us. So now's the time. So
Maurice, I was thinking about House Bill 150 right now that some of us have been talking about. It's this idea that they're going to try to limit the city's choices for some utility, and it's going to limit renewables. It's coming from the natural gas, and the utilities are pushing this bill through a lot of southern states, and Georgia is one. I think there's been a lot about the voter bill that's been in the news, and I think there would be more about this House Bill 150 if not for that voter bill. I think the voter bill has taken front seat in terms of the media. But I heard I was listening to a webinar yesterday. Georgia Conservancy was on, the Sierra Club was on, City of Savannah was on, City of Athens was on. And Jeanette Gayer from Environment Georgia said, this is the fossil fuel forever bill. It's going to stay at the fossil fuels. So the problem is, we move from coal, which is terrible in terms of air quality and environmental impact. And then you've got moved to natural gas, which we've made that transition pretty well. But now we're trying to move from natural gas to the renewables. And we're kind of going to get stuck on natural gas if this bill passes. And it's moving through pretty quick. And it's kind of scary. I talked to Brian Strickland's office this morning, trying a last ditch to say, I just don't like this bill. It doesn't give cities choices that they're going to need. It's going to tie their hands when they make these commitments for 100% renewable. And, we're all working in our community. Sustainable Newton would love to see Covington be one of these cities. But, if these kinds of bills limit the city's choices and ability to move towards these renewables, it's going to be a real problem, I think.
All right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
It's a really hard fought bill. Jeanette Gare has been leading the charge on trying to get this thing squashed, but you're right. It is moving through very quickly. And Jeanette is on our board at the Georgia Solar Energy Association. And it could also have impacts on local ordinances to require that new homes and businesses be solar ready, for example, and or even install solar, which you're seeing some of those go across. I think Massachusetts just passed a bill that requires all new homes and businesses to be either solar ready or have solar on them. And so there is a concern that if the state can preempt a city from banning natural gas hookups in new construction, then, can they apply that law to solar readiness as well? So it's an important bill. But ironically, not a single city in the entire state of Georgia has ever tried to ban natural gas hookups. So this is a big national push. You're right, Theodosia. Like, they're trying to get this, preemptively across all the states as much as they can before it does come up.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour, and so I want to kind of keep us on our time commitment. So, but I do really want to thank Aaron and Don for joining us today, and it's good to all be back together, at least virtually a little bit. And certainly thanks Theodosia and Melissa both for preparing for this and sharing your stories. I did want to just quickly mention, if I can find it, I won't bother to share, but on our website, if you go look at our calendar, sustainablenewton.org, our calendar, in 2 weeks from tomorrow, we have an upcoming session that's pretty neat. It's going to, we're going to have Wayne Haney, who's the chief engineer with the Newton County Water and Sewage Authority, Mike Hopkins, the executive director, and they're going to join us to talk about a project that they're working on with some students from Georgia Tech to look at ways to reuse industrial water out at Stanton Springs Industrial Park. So we have Takata and Facebook both out there now with very large facilities, a lot of water usage. And so they're looking at some creative ways to not have our industrial water use impact what we have available to serve, as drinking water for the public at large. So pretty fascinating story. And so they'll be here with us for that. So be sure and go online to our calendar, sign up on Zoom so you can join us for that. And then stay tuned, because we'll have something coming up in May on composting with Ashley Best, our extension agent. And so we're still putting that together, but probably the first week of May, which happens to be International Composting Month. So, but again, thanks guys for joining us today. As always, we enjoy working with you. We look forward to staying in touch and all of us together helping to move solar forward in the state of Georgia. So with that, I'm going to wrap us up. Thanks everybody who joined us and the questions and everything else. So we'll see everybody soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice.
Thank you.
All right, bye.